You know, back in the day when I was a student in the school, standard 12th, I was having a conversation with some of my friends who were who were my classmates, and we were just wondering what we want to do when we grow up, right? And this was class 12, so by then we had already chosen our subjects, and all four of us had both mathematics as well as biology. And one of the wise guy among four of us said that I don't want to become a doctor. And we asked him why. And he said, you know, doctors always have to study even after they become doctors. So the lifelong study. And we were like, yeah, that's a good idea. If we do engineering, we probably don't have to study. How wrong I was, right? So I'm going to talk about what does it mean to be a student of the game briefly. And I'll talk to you guys about as business analysts, as the term I used a few moments ago, employees in the digital era or the digital employees, what do you need to do in today's day and age to keep yourself up to date and be relevant and be meaningful and successful in your lives, in your careers? Almost all the roles that we see are undergoing some sort of change. You know, not too long ago, even though I'm an engineer, I was in business development, sales and business development. And even that role had undergone a vast amount of change. There used to be a time when the salesmen simply used to go to their clients and open that these are the different things I'm selling, and that's how they used to sell stuff. You know, these are the 5 different items I can sell you. I'm going to give you the best price, and whoever was the most glib talker was able to close the sale and deal and then just collect their bonuses. It stopped happening many, many years ago. You had to become a consultative sales guy. You had to understand the client. You had to empathize with their problems. You had to know what's exactly is keeping them up at night and be able to come up with the solution which matches their requirements, their needs. And not just that, be able to articulate that solution really well so that they can understand the value in what you're bringing. So the role of sales has also changed. Likewise, if you look at your role, it's changing too. How many of you, by the way, just by a show of hands, have heard the term full stack developer? How about polyglot developers? No? How about Superman business analysts? Well, the last one I made up, and Ashish has heard it from me, I guess. So Superman business analysts, it doesn't exist, but that's essentially what we are expected to become. We are expected to solve many problems besides what we have originally kind of learned or decided or be trained on, essentially. So as you go forward in your career, you need to be able to not only solve the business analysis type problem, which is basically understanding what exactly is the project or the initiative that you're working on, translating the requirements of your end user and kind of getting it built, etc. But even beyond that, and we have been talking about how this role is changing. Some of the business analysts are getting into a bit of a product management kind of capabilities. They don't go deep into it, but they need to be able to step up at times and play that role. Some of them also get into technology aspects to it. And it's very, very important because technology, as we all know, is the most important ingredient of the digital transformation in today's time. There's a very high velocity at which it's changing. There are lots of action. And like in the panel that we had a few minutes ago, we established that the technology is something that your leaders, the people that you work with, are also looking at you to come up with, be trained on, come up with ideas and solutions. Why? Because as Forrester, we do research, and we ask questions to those leaders, those business and technology leaders, and we ask them what exactly is the most important thing that they believe they need to deal with in their businesses. So it's not politics, it's not Mr. Trump or Mr. Modi or anyone else, or it's not competition or disruption market, of course, that's important. It's not economics, it's not Brexit or whatever is happening in China versus US and whatnot. It's the technology. Because whatever is happening outside the 4 walls of the enterprise, you have something that you control and something that you can do meaningful with in your organization. And that's what they're worried about. As the technology is changing, how do they use that technology to redesign their processes, redefine the way they serve the customer, that's what's keeping keeping them awake. And as digital employees, you also need to be aware of what kind of technology changes that are happening in the industry. So what exactly is the role of technology, and what is this digital transformation? And we kind of talked about that a few minutes ago. This digital transformation is all about harnessing those technologies to continuously either improve the experience that you're delivering to your customers, be it internal customers, its employees, or external customers, the experience that you're delivering to them, or the way you are changing your business to serve those customers. Whether it's your retail operations or the banking operations, the core banking or manufacturing, like Sanjeev from ABB established, how do you change yourself to become agile to ultimately serve that increasingly powerful customers? Funny thing on this slide is not in the definition, it's on the title of the slide. Some people believe they have already completed that digital transformation, and that's like the big issue. This is an ongoing thing. You cannot complete a digital transformation because we established that digital transformation was happening even before this digital transformation was happening. So it's just the nature of the business keeps changing, nature of the scope of this digital transformation keeps changing, but it's an ongoing process. So there again, there's an importance for you to be continuously aware of what those changes are and how is technology impacting those changes. Where exactly are these changes happening? So this is where the intersection of the customer and the enterprise is, where the innovation happens. So the customers are engaging with an enterprise through what we call as systems of engagement. I'm sorry if it's not that visible. Even I can't see very clearly from here. So if it's not visible, hopefully we can refocus it. But at the top, you have what we call as systems of engagement. The touch points, the mobile app, the website, the kiosk or branch or whatever, where you are delivering some sort of experience to your customers to engage, even call center for that matter. And the bottom is the enterprise core, which is enabling those touch points to enable certain actions to be taken on them. And what we find that for every $1 of transformation that's happening in those touch points, there's a $4 worth of transformation that happens at the core. The kind of things that you find in your business. So whether you are helping your company to come up with innovations or the changes in the ERP or the core transformation of any industry, that's where significant amount of work that's happening. So as the key cog in the wheel of this whole enterprise, which is kind of making these changes happen, you have an important role to play. So now I'm going to switch the content and talk about what are those technologies which are impacting these systems of engagement as well as the systems of record or systems of, the enabling systems, if you will. So on the left, you have what we call as systems of engagement technologies. These are the technologies through which you are trying to deliver those experiences in real-time basis, which are contextual, personalized, and with which your customers are delivering, deriving value. And there's a ton of changes that are happening in this space. We have listed 5 of them on this slide, and I'm going to go into the details of that. So as business analysts, you need to know what these changes are and how you train yourself on them to be able to bring them to your business, back into your business, and while you are figuring out the requirements and everything, come up with ideas and at least be aware of what an intelligent agent can do, what kind of use cases can be driven, because unless you are aware of those changes, you cannot add value into the process, and you need to add value because every digital employee needs to add value. Likewise, on the right, we have what we call as systems of insight technologies. These are the technologies which go deep into the organization's applications and the systems of record and create certain insights and then power those systems of engagement through which your customers or even employees are engaging. And this is where you have all the IoT and the insight platform, which are collecting all that data, figuring out, making a sense of it, and bringing all that information in the systems of engagement. Now, these two are obviously very, very relevant for the folks who are in this room. But there are other technologies which you may not directly touch, but at least you should be aware of. And these are the supporting technologies, the way things are happening in an enterprise, which are enabling some of those transformation on the top layer to happen. These are your infrastructure-related technologies. These are the security-related technologies. These are the cloud and the wireless-related technologies which are making the enterprise more fast and connected than ever before. So just moving on quickly, what are those 5 systems of engagement technologies that we have? Here we have listed down IoT, software, and solutions. These are the ones which are helping the enterprise connect with their customers, control some of the interactions with them, as well as even consume some of those technologies which are built by someone else to inform those interactions. These are AR and VR technologies, intelligent agents. The things that we see at our home in the form of Amazon Alexa or Google Home and things like that. Real-time interaction management, the marketing technologies with which you are able to collect the data about the customers and inform that particular engagement in a very contextual manner so that you can change that interaction on a real-time basis. While it looks simple, it needs to go deep into huge amounts of data that you might be collecting through different channels and then analyzing it, which happens on the systems of insight side. Personal identity and data management. Someone asked a question in the last discussion, how is security and privacy relevant? These are very, very relevant because unless you can give that feeling to the customer that your data is secure with them and you're kind of leveraging some of these technologies to really make it secure, you would lose the trust. And that's where these technologies play a role. So just to quickly get into what exactly IoT is used for. So like I said, there are 3 things organizations are doing with it. One, they are making their products smarter, products and services. They are connecting them with some of these IoT tech. And we talked about ABB doing it. I talked about John Deere doing it. But pretty much any industry that you touch, which is in the making of discrete products, they are trying to make them smart. Even to the extent that the elevator that you took on the way up here, in the large setups, where there's a multi-story, 100-story kind of a setup, the elevator companies are making those elevators smart so that they know at the given time of the day, where should they keep the elevators in the bank so that they can reach the customers in the shortest possible time. So in the morning, they try to keep most of the elevators at the bottom, for example, and during the evening hours when the employees are leaving, they try to keep them up there. So the systems of insights collect the data. Sorry, IoT collects data, systems of insight processes it, but the IoT ultimately makes those things happen. They are operating using IoT. So companies like Rio Tinto, for example, are running their entire mines, entire ports, and railway operations that they run for their mining railroad, use the IoT to control and drive actions. Then, likewise, I think, again, this is something Sanjeev mentioned in the panel before. There are lots of providers of data using IoT technologies like IBM Watson or the Weather Channel, essentially, which collects weather data. So these are third-party data providers which are using IoT to collect the data, and companies are leveraging, consuming that data to make their interactions or their processes smarter. Moving on the intelligent agent side, there are 3 things that are happening there. So, of course, this is the most common and the visible element of the intelligent automation. More than 50 million such devices have already been sold. This data is a bit dated, probably 3-4 months ago. So I'm sure by now it's probably 60-70 million. But this is something that's happening at a rapid pace. But the intelligent automation is happening in 3 different ways. Of course, there's a whole conversational side to it, which gets delivered through these devices or through IVR or whatever. But there's a whole conversational computing side to it, the chatbots that are emerging to serve customers in a variety of use cases, both in upstream selling as well as in customer support, as well as even during when they are trying to use the products and services. So that's the second. Third element where we see intelligent automation happening is in robotic process automation, in which companies are trying to automate their back-end processes. Remember, experience, operation. So in the operational side, they're using these technologies ultimately to transform the way the employees are working. So it's basically internal customer, but they're augmenting these employees with this robotic process automation to make those processes much more faster, less error prone, and things like that. So that's a quick preview on the systems of engagement. Moving on, these are the technologies on the systems of insight side, which are helping the organizations move from insights to action. So you could be data rich, but unless you are generating insights from it and ultimately can drive actions with it, that data is meaningless. So the technologies that help you do that are on this slide. So that's where all the AI and the cognitive technologies come into picture. IoT analytics, which is again a field in itself, because IoT data, as you can imagine, has a pretty unique characteristics of being a time series data. So you require specialized tools and techniques to be able to analyze it, which was not possible with the other traditional form of data analysis or reporting. Spatial analytics, very similar to IoT data, but things like having the location of the activity or the transaction gives you an insight and different kinds of insights about them. For example, I was at a bank's innovation lab in Singapore, and they were looking at this data to figure out what exactly was happening to their ATMs and bank branches in the different parts of the city, and what actions do they need to take. So for example, at a given time, Little India requires a lot of cash in the ATMs because the people are withdrawing it for whatever purchases that they're making. And the denomination that they need to have available in those ATMs is different from the one in, say, at Orchard Road, which is probably a larger denomination. So the spatial analytics helps do that. It has applications in agriculture and farming. As you can imagine, you need to know which farms are getting impacted with what kind of the humidity, the moisture, the soil type, and all those. Insight platforms are interesting, and that's the way even the traditional data warehousing side, which I'm sure quite a few of you might be familiar with, that's changing. Earlier, it was simply possible to collect requirements of a report, give it to a data developer who would ultimately write certain SQL queries and whatnot, and those will get delivered through some reporting dashboard. That's changing, and I'm going to talk about that in a minute. Customer journey analytics is how your customers are engaging with you across multiple channels, and what exactly do they do in different channels, how do you analyze and generate insights from them so that you can engage with them. So there's a whole host of technologies that are evolving in this space. Just to quickly talk about what exactly AI is, and I'm not going to spend too much time because AI almost, it's of everyone's interest, but there's a lot of talk on this already. AI is basically, we are striving to make machine think and act like human, right? So you can sense, you can think, you can act, you can learn like a human, and whatever we do in the endeavor of that makes up the AI technologies. And while it sounds very easy, but it's pretty complex. However, there's one definition which I really like, and which kind of puts it really in a simple term, is the science and engineering of making intelligent machines. And this definition in itself encapsulates a huge amount of work that's happening in the AI space. I'm going to give you some example of what are the different techniques and technologies that have evolved. So back in the day, we used to try to make our programs or machines intelligent by coding those if-then statement, right? So if this, do this, if then do this, and whatever. So the logic was encoded deep into the programs to make them smart. But then somewhere around 60s and 70s, there was a parallel field which kind of was developing called machine learning, in which we were figuring out how do you learn from the data and make your algorithms smarter. While they were not encoded in the systems as much till mid-2000s, but certainly that started happening. But sometime around 2011 and 12, Google released this thing called deep learning. They made it open source, something that they had been using, and that has taken this field on a completely different trajectory. So while you had supervised machine learning, which was done before, in which you were doing all kinds of things like fraud detection. So if you remember, even 2006 and 7, if your bank card got swiped, your banks were able to identify it's probably a fraudulent transaction. It was done using this. Unsupervised machine learning is where we see all kinds of intelligent agents, etc., that we talked about. But now this field is evolving even further. There's a significant amount of deep learning related capabilities that are evolving, such as generative adversarial networks and hyperparameter tuning, transfer learning, and things like that which are coming up with very, very interesting use cases. In fact, in India, right here in this city, one of the retailers is using that to come up with new designs for our clothes based on what they are selling on their website. So think of the role of the, since we were talking about role of the employees, so we had all these clothes designers who are coming with all kinds of prints, etc. That role is going to go away to machines, because machines will have better data on how individuals are buying, what kind of clothes they are buying, and using that data, they can come up with newer product and see whether that works or not, and then kind of keep on refining that. So there's a significant amount of effort happening in that space. This is where I'm going to talk about the insight platforms. So on the left, I'm sorry, this is a busy slide, but without looking at the slide, I can tell you the job of Insights last few years ago was to have a data warehouse or something. You kind of create certain reports and dashboard using certain tools, and then it used to get delivered to whoever was consuming that. But that role has become even bigger and broader, and not just those insights. Now you need to be able to collect the feedback. Oh, well, feedback comes later. First, you need to generate those insights. Then you need to be able to deliver those insights in a granular fashion to the point of action, not just in the form of the report, but some insight which the person who is working or acting on something can consume and act on it. And then the delivery itself happens, and then you collect the data from that point of action, bring the feedback back into your database. There's a whole host of technologies that are evolving to make the data collection, which is on the underlying big data layer, but then generating the insights, delivering it, collecting the feedback. So there's a significant amount of evolution that's happening. So if you go back and look at your role, if you are in the data reporting and warehousing kind of a BA, then you need to see what's happening in that space. So moving on, this third one, I'm not going to spend too much time, but these are the supporting technologies. There's a significant amount of changes that are happening with in the clouds and the container space, which helps the organization become really faster and connected. But I'm going to talk about blockchain real quick, which I know is of interest to quite a few folks in today's time. So, and there's a lot of literature. In fact, this is again someone talked about that. If you hear about blockchain, be curious, go and ask. And I'm sure quite a few are already doing it. So what exactly is blockchain? This is something which is changing the way the trust gets recorded and utilized in a society. Back in the day, we used to have a one-on-one trust. I trade with you, you trade with me, and we know each other, and it was great. Then it became many to one. So for example, we all started trusting the bank that it's going to keep our money safe and things like that. But in today's society, the trust is becoming many to many. And you need solution which is decentralized, something that we all can trust, and blockchain is solving that problem. There's a significant amount of literature on this topic, especially I would say if you haven't read about it, go and talk about, for example, Byzantine's emperor problem. I'm not sure how many of you have heard of it. Have you heard of Byzantine emperor's problem? Any of you? No. Go ahead and read on it. It's very interesting. This slide will become very, very clear once you kind of talk about. But the key thing, in the interest of time, I'm going to go and talk about what are the use cases it's supporting. So on the business networks, it's kind of transforming them the way different companies were coming together and kind of interacting with each other. So in the supply chain side, a lot of supply chain financing is being done using blockchain. You might have heard of the famous case study of Maersk in the Nordic, using this to kind of engage with its partners on a blockchain-based platform so that they can track their activities together. On the banking side, there's a cross-border payment and remittances. Even in India, Axis Bank, for example, started using this technology, and they cut down the time and the cost it took to transfer money from different countries back to India from days to minutes. And earlier they were using Swift-based network, but now they're looking at blockchain. Digital asset management, the way you secure your digital assets like security, stocks, shares, and whatnot. And that's where stock exchanges around the globe are looking at that at blockchain to solve that. And likewise, on the process transformation in the anti-money laundering and the enterprise fraud management side is also looking at blockchain. So there's a ton of potential in this technology that I believe you guys should look at, spend some time learning. So there's a ton of changes that are happening. But let me just go back to our earlier point. This technology enough to kind of transform or change the enterprise. So this is an interesting study we did. We asked in US certain marketers, how many of you, and by the way, the effect of this slide is lost because I'm using a PDF version. This was animated. We asked the marketers how many of them would like to use augmented reality and virtual reality kind of solutions for their users, for their consumer, for the customers to kind of drive some use cases. 43% of them raised their hands. They said, yes, we would like to do that. Then we went and asked their customers that if your brand was offering this, would you use it? And only 5% said that. So the technology in itself is, of course, not the answer, while we are kind of exhorting you to go and read and make yourself aware of the technology. And that's where your business acumen, you being business analyst, is going to be helpful. I'm going to talk about not putting the cart before the horse, not having the technology drive your actions, but essentially coming up with use cases and then and kind of solving for your customers. And that's where I'm going to introduce the topic of what we call as customer-obsessed enterprise. A customer-obsessed enterprise is which puts customers at the center, and pretty much everything that they do is driven by it. And this could be your internal customer or an external customer. That's something you need to engage with. And there are 4 principles that these kind of organizations follow. Whenever they are doing anything, they look at these principles, whether it's related to selecting a technology, changing a process, selecting the right kind of metrics for measuring their actions. They look at whether it's helping them moving from customer aware to customer led. Just being aware of the customer is not enough. You need to be able to co-create with them. You need to be able to understand what they're doing. Very few firms have started to do that. Data rich to insights driven. We talked about that in the context of insights platform. Moving from perfect to fast. So all of you might be familiar with the agile development kind of methodologies. So how, not just that, but even as an organization, you create a culture of becoming really fast, and then siloed to connected. So moving to that as the 4th principles. So once you collect these 4 principles, look at what are the different things the organization is doing. You need to be able to kind of create a digital transformation which is meaningful. So I'm going to quickly move on to an example which is kind of related to this, but it puts the whole thing in perspective as to how you can use it. And that's around design thinking and how you use design as a way to kind of change your role. As you think of the emerging technologies, think of design thinking and the way you kind of look at those technologies to solve business problems. I'm going to show that with an example real quick. So, of course, everyone has heard of GE, right? And we talked about GE in the last session as well. So GE, in one of their businesses, well, before I go there, the traditional way GE was able to do things was just looking at business and technology and be able to solve that problem. And because of it being a PDF, I'm sorry, there's an animation at the bottom. Once you reveal it, the design appears. So the third element that they introduced in their business was design thinking and ability to empathize with customer and understand what exactly their challenges are. So not put the cart before the horse, not just focus on technology, but how do you solve for that. So in one situation, one of the engineers was working on this machine, which is basically an MRI machine. And one of the hospitals was, they built this machine and they were selling to Children's Hospital, and they were wondering how can they make it better. And the engineer went to this hospital for a study, and they were trying to figure out what exactly is going on. And this was a kid's hospital, like I said. So he saw how difficult it was for a kid, especially who's like 7, 8, 9 years old. They used to look at this machine, they used to get intimidated, right? They were wondering, how do I make it easy for this? Should I change the look of it? Should I move some of the buttons, some of the hardware, reorient it? What can I do? But there were, of course, limitations of the technology that that would prevent him from making some of those changes. So he spent some time understanding who their customers were, and which ultimately were those small kids, and what kind of solution they were offering. And after spending some time and away from business and technology, he looked at design concepts, and the solution that he came up was something like this. So he did not even change one single button on the machine. Only thing he changed was the atmosphere around it, right? He made it real pretty. And the kids, instead of being scared by the whirring sound and all those kind of crazy looking machines, they really got interested in it. They were in a different world. And it was able to kind of bring them to this machine, get them scanned in a really short amount of time, which ultimately helped the hospital because now they could get scan quite a few more kids in a given amount of time versus before. And kids did not have to be dragged into it, kicking and screaming. They could just come in and get scanned. So all I said about technology, why you should know, you should learn, you should understand what's happening, but don't forget who you guys are. You guys are basically you business analysts. You understand the business. Think of the problem in the new light and think of solving them from a different perspective. Think out of the box. It's a cliched term, I know, but think out of the box and look at how you can change your role and how you can be a student of the game that you are in which you're constantly studying. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. So, thank you, Ashutosh, for, I thought it was my deck that you were presenting, really, because it looks so real. I think the way we are in the middle of this change, and all of us are struggling to find answers in our different contexts, whether it is, helping CXOs in case of Ashutosh, or in my case, trying to help the BA community in helping unclutter the digital world, and then reimagining business analysis and how to apply that in the digital world, but at the same time, how to have you guys scale up in supporting your client engagement. I like few terms that Ashutosh brought out. I think especially the last few slides where he brought out 4 principles. Customer-centric, data-driven, fast, and one more. Ashutosh, I'm sorry, I forgot. And siloed to connected. And you know what? I think there are very similar things that we have also observed as IIBA in terms of how would business analysis change, what kind of best practices we should adopt to be able to deliver in those engagements. So I want to show you a quick video of what digital means to us. I think we've all discussed it, but thanks to one of this beautiful video that really impressed me.
No, it's just construction. That's all. No, I'm not driving.
Are you okay?
Yeah, you?
I'm good.
Oh, no, not you. Listen, I'm gonna have to call my agent. I'm gonna get right back to you.
Mr. Burton, this is InsureCorp. We've received sensor data that indicates you were in an accident. Are you injured in any way?
I'm not injured, no.
Is anyone else injured?
I don't believe so.
Okay, where's my agent's number?
We have pinpointed your location, and we are showing your car is not drivable. So we are dispatching an Uber car to take you to your destination.
That would be great.
I'm pressing 1. English. E-N-G-L-I, English.
May we give your coordinates to our appraiser drone to perform the appraisal?
Absolutely.
We have received the photos, assessed the damage, authorized the repair, selected a qualified repair facility, and have dispatched a tow truck to take your vehicle to that facility.
Perfect.
Yes, hi, this is... Yes. I'll hold.
We have looked up the other vehicle's insurance, transmitted the appropriate data to create the claim, and filed the California SR1 accident report. Can you confirm the information is correct on your phone, then hit the accept button?
I'll check it right now. Okay, all done?
Thank you. Your Uber car is arriving now.
I see it coming.
Accident, not payment. Accident.
Your tow truck should be there now. Don't forget to leave your keys in the vehicle. Thank you for using InsureCorp, powered by Pivotal Labs.
Do you see this? Isn't it real? How technology can really change the customer experience completely, and to Ashutosh's point, not keeping a horse, a cart in front of the horse. I think we need to figure out what that horse is, where this, what do we need to drag, and what do we need to really change. I think phenomenal, and thanks to EMC, this is a public video, so I just want to put up a disclaimer here. This is not any promotion for a company, but a beautiful message that has been coined out. So now the question is, what does it tell us? What are we trying to do? I think we look at technology, we look at digital, but what does it mean to us? And I think Ashutosh pointed out beautifully, it's the customer centricity, the customer experience that comes first. I think the first challenge we have observed is the moment we talk about digital, we all think about AI, automation, blockchain, IoT, and so on and so forth, and list is never ending, right? The technologies are being innovated every week. So the point here is we need to forget those. We need to unclutter that digital world for ourselves and think about what does the real customer need? What is that experience, exceptional experience that customers are looking for? And asking those right questions, and the questions that clients are themselves not aware of. They've not asked themselves. They don't know the real needs. So thinking about an experience that customers have also not thought about, what they want to, think about. Look at Uber. Who thought, there would be somebody who will give us a 2-click model to order a car at home, and we would forget driving. I mean, I don't drive anymore. I do Uber, right? But it's become so real and so natural in our lifestyle. And then comes technology. Now, there are so many of them. But the point is, if you look at any of the transformation engagement, it's the set of technologies that come together to be able to deliver that customer experience. You looked at the video. Think behind the scene, how many technologies are deployed at tandem to create that experience. There would be IoT. There was drone connectivity. There was a lot of analytics behind the scene. There would be AI. There are so many technologies that work at tandem to create an experience. It is not the other way around where we say, oh, I have got an AI, now let me think what I need to do with it. Right? So it's about experience first and then the technology. And the other trend that we are observing as IIBA is, again, the domain convergence. Business domains are converging. It's boundaryless now. Uber, for that matter, who thought a technology company would provide supply chain solution, but at the same time also serve food at our doorstep, right? So think about domains, the boundaries of those domains getting disrupted. And Ashutosh put it beautifully in multiple contexts in how technologies are coming together in different industry scenarios. So what does this mean for business analysts? I think, are we relevant? How many of us in this room think we are not relevant in the digital world? Please raise your hand. You think we are not relevant in the digital world? Or are we? We are not relevant in the digital world. Raise your hand. We are not relevant in the digital world. Only 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 people in this room out of 300 or 400 sitting here think we are not relevant in the digital world. I think, and we can talk that offline with all 4 of you. The question is, how do we deliver that engagement? How do we change ourselves in delivering the right customer experience? And that is what we've figured out a 4-step model in delivering, in crossing that barrier, crossing that journey, and be able to rightly equip ourselves in able to deliver that experience. The first one is the best practices. And then comes the competencies. I think IIBA is about those best practices and competencies. And as a part of the thought leadership portfolio, we've tried putting in a lot of effort in gathering that information and passing it on to you. If you go to IIBA's thought leadership booth or look at this QR code, there are a ton of reports. There are 2 that got released, which have all of this information available to you free of cost. So you can download it. And then we talk about a lot of the specializations and career architecture frameworks, which will help you change your career, which will help you move you towards being relevant in the digital world. So these are the 4 key pillars that we talk about. Let's look at them quickly because of the paucity of time, and I won't discuss too much in the days. There are 7 best practices that we are calling out. It's paper number 1 in the Digital Business Analysis Thought Leadership Series, free download to all of you sitting in this room. Just look at the QR code and you can get your soft copy. It talks about 7 best practices, right from understanding the strategic imperative in an engagement. Gone are the days when we would ask a question, why are you doing an engagement to a customer? We didn't do that. But now, without knowing what those strategic intents are, we really can't deliver. And the reason is clients know strategic intent, but they don't know what they really need to be able to meet that objective. And so we need to co-create in Ashutosh terms. Empathizing with real customer. Customer centricity, we spoke about it. Reimagining the business process. Think about Uber, two-step. Somebody said order the car. Otherwise, we used to pick up the phone, make sure our cab driver sends the cab on time and things like that. There were a lot of chaotic situations. But reimagining that experience, reimagining the business process that will get a customer, the kind of experience you're looking at. Embracing agility, which is about fast and not being perfect. Ashutosh spoke about it. Continuous collaboration, not in isolation, not siloed. It's collaborative. Think about it. I think there are a lot of commonalities. Data-driven, which is where the evidence comes in picture. You look at the past history, look at ton of volume of data that's available. It's an information that can be extracted to get you some inferences based on which we can think about the experiences that can be solved. And then, of course, understanding technology. If you don't know, for example, blockchain, you won't know what problem can blockchain solve for you. Because in front of customer, you won't realize, if you don't, if there is a problem statement client gives, and if you can't contextualize the solution, you're gone. So knowing technology, and I'm not saying being a developer in those technologies, but appreciating those technologies is going to be key for you to really design the relevant solution for a customer. And now the question is, how do you really look at your soft skills? And that's where competencies come into picture. These are 8 competency groups for the digital space that IIB has identified. Again, paper number 2 in the Digital Business Analysis series, downloadable free of cost to all of you. Go to the QR code, download it, right? I won't go through in detail because of the time. And then a lot of people asked us, how do you go about this technology disruption? There's so many of them, superhuman, super BAs. Do we really need to be that? I don't think we can be that. I don't understand so many technologies, believe me. So what does that mean for BA community here? How do we really build our career? So what we think is, in addition to the business analysis foundational capabilities that body of knowledge and IIBA brought to the table over the years, there are 7 best practices that get weaved in as the foundation. So in addition to those knowledge areas and Babok content, you have to internalize these best practices and be able to look at each of these technologies to create micro credentials, micro specializations, and be able to drive your career towards specialization. So let's think about, I'm really interested in data. How would I go about building my capability in the business analysis space with data as a specialization, in data science as a specialization? You, of course, need some knowledge of statistics and some of the mathematical tools, but also you need to understand, for example, analytics. You probably need to understand AI, ML, and how data gets applied and inferred to produce inferences on the go. So there would be some micro-credentialing that BAs have to go through to be able to get specialized in this space. Why are we calling this out? Is because we believe one person cannot understand so many technologies. I think gone are the days, 15, 20 years back, when I started my career as a BA, there were 5-7 technologies. Mainframes, Java, .NET, Oracle Financials, SAP, some TPF platforms, and that's it. We still thought, oh, that was not a baby. But look at the world now. Every week you hear a new technology. We can't cope up. But what that means is we need to be selective in the decision in terms of where we want to go. What are our likes? What are our dislikes? What are our strengths in terms of professional capabilities? And pick those career paths very, very consciously. One of the other observations, look at any digital engagement, right? It's not about one technology serving a client experience end to end. There are a set of technologies coming together, right? So in any digital engagement, there'll be 5 to 10 technologies coming together to give an experience. And you don't know all those 5, 10. What that means is there would be someone who would know maybe AI, ML, analytics. So there is one personality BA, a specialized BA in that space. The other may be specialized in cloud, so he knows how to manage the infrastructure part. The other person could be specialized in security, cybersecurity, and stuff like that. It's a team of BAs who would come together, who would have similar foundational capabilities, which is the bottom of the picture. But at the same time, they will have specialized in specific technology areas. And that team will deliver a digital transformation engagement, right? So with that view, we believe it is important to build a career with this kind of a framework. In the same paper, we've also spoken about a career architecture. So the competencies on the competencies on the left and best practices on the top, we've come up with a heat map. And looking at this heat map, the question is, how does it vary from different roles? And there are three kind of roles we believe will evolve over a period of time in the digital space. The first one is digital strategists. The map will change. The second one is digital specialists who specialize in a specific technology area. The map would look different. And then there's a third term that we've called as Renaissance BAs. Solution architects, user experience experts, testers, and so on and so forth. There's so many other roles that are applying business analysis capabilities without really knowing it. But if they know this well, I think they'll be much more better in their capabilities. So the paper number 2 talks about this career architecture framework that you can leverage to build your own capabilities. You can build your own direction. And your employers can adopt this framework to create a career architecture for the whole organization. So we believe the trends that Ashutosh spoke about, we are observing similar things when we talk to a lot of our customers. And our own research ties back to some of the findings that Ashutosh spoke about. And that's what we have kept in mind in creating actionable competency structure, actionable best practice structure, and actionable career architecture and a career growth path guidelines for you to adopt to be able to grow. This is one of the common questions we got from a lot of communities. I think last year also at the convention, we were talking about customer experience as a theme, and this was very common. How are we relevant? And if we are relevant, how do we grow? How do we change ourselves? How do we equip ourselves to be able to deliver that engagement? And we took this cognizance of the fact that community really needs this insight. And here is a 9-paper series getting published. 2 of them are already out. The third one would be out in a couple of days. Thank you very much. Questions? Any question for me or Ashutosh? Please.
Difference between a customer-centric organization and a customer-obsessed organization?
That's a very good question. So customer-centric, if you notice, I talked about moving from being customer-aware to customer-led. So customer-centric is a traditional way of defining the things that we were doing to understand the customer better, having more insights about them, and things like that. But the customer-led is moving beyond that and putting customer in the center of everything that you do. So the way you interact with your partners to solve the problems for them, even invite them to co-create with them. Just to give you an example from a manufacturing company like Haier. Haier, we know their ACs and washing machines and basically the white goods that they sell, right? So what they are doing, for example, moving from, so earlier they had all these surveys in which they were collecting customer preferences and figuring out what kind of products they would like. So they were obviously customer-centric to that extent. But now they are involving customers into the product design as well. So they're doing even things beyond surveys, like getting into ethnographic studies, sending their employees to their locations where the customers are using products. So, and then involving the customer in the design process. That's a new and even more deeper level of involvement. And that's the reason we wanted to drive that distinction between being customer-centric and being customer-obsessed. So to the extent that Haier now comes up with products which are sold even before they are manufactured or put in the market. So just like a Kickstarter, essentially.
One thing related to customer involvement, even Agile used to talk about the same thing, how customer becomes involved in the whole process and possibly execution and so on, even in design, the entire stage. So from an Agile perspective, of course, that's also one of the concepts wherein customer involvement is there, customer-obsessed organization or enterprise also. So an Agile enterprise and also a customer-obsessed enterprise.
Which is kind of true. So if you look at the slide, which did not animate that much, but there were 4 principles I talked about: customer aware to customer led, and those 3. Then we talked about 6 different levers. I think it was structure, talent, matrix, process, technology, and one more. So when it comes to processes, Agile is one of the ways, one of the processes that you need to select to be able to, which is in line with those principles. So essentially, it's one of the ways to become customer obsessed.
Very nice. Any other question, please? There's a question in the back. Ashutosh.
This is not as much as a question as a suggestion from my end. In talking about all these different technologies that are in place, as a BA, one thing we need to understand is what is the objective of these technologies and what is the business model that the organization is using. In the example that you showed about the car, you talked about multiple technologies. That who is the person? Is it an insurance company that is working, or is it the automobile company that is working? Which is the company that is doing, and what is their objective in doing it? So as a BA, what we should do is identify what is the objective of the company, identify the business model, identify what are the products and services. Once we do that, then it will be a lot easier for us to relate to what the customer wants. That's the first point. Practically speaking, for many of us, it's going to be very difficult because it is easier to do it if you are working as a BA in an IT division of a product company because you learn the end-to-end. But if you're working in a service company, you are put in a very, very small silo. In such a situation, how do you go about empowering yourself, or how do you go about understanding it? From my end, I mean, like my experience, having worked there, I would say that understand what the product and service that you are offering to the customer, and also understand that customers are of multiple levels. And we are talking about digitalization. Also understand that this appeals to a particular segment of customers. How varied is this segment? What is the duration in which the segment is going to be there? Are they going to be good for good, or are they going to change? And coming to the Forrester's thing, you also had, Gartner also brought in a graph where they said about peak of inflated expectations, then trough of disillusionment, and then it goes to a plateau of realistic expectations. So in this case, under which category would you put all these technologies? Because Gartner had come up with that.
I think that's all contextual. You made 4 points.
Yeah.
Can I answer all 4 of them? So first one, I think you mentioned business model.
Yeah.
It's important for you to understand. But I think there is a next wave, which is the disruption of those models is what we are talking. What you saw in the video was not an automobile company, not an insurance company. There are multiple domains, automobile, insurance, logistics, all of them coming together for that experience. So it's not about existing business model. It's about reimagining the new business model where these domains are converging. I think that's where we need to get to. We are not there yet, but as a community, that's the message that we are talking. That's the first thing. Second thing, you spoke about knowing the objective of the technology. I think we get bogged down by the technology itself.
Yes.
What we are trying to, what we discussed was unclutter that. I think technology comes last.
Yes.
What comes first is, as we said, what is that experience? What's the business model? Why are we doing it? What ROI are we going to get? What are we trying to achieve as a business,
That's
right, out of that? And then figuring out, okay, if this is the objective, what technologies will come into picture? So technology provides you characteristics of what you can achieve, right? Blockchain, trust, AI, insights, and learning, right? Deep learning. So we know what these technologies are capable of. The point is, how do you contextualize those technologies and bring all of them together to be able to deliver the answer? There were 2 more questions, I'm sorry.
Just to add to the second one, so leading with technology is again putting the cart before the horse. You don't want to do that. That's exactly the point we were trying to make.
That comes later. I mean, it just happened yesterday. We did a full day workshop on digital and applying business analysis in the digital world. When we started with the whole group of 80 people, everybody started with questions on technology. And when we structured that conversation a little bit, believe me, technology conversation came at 6 p.m. in the end, at the end of the workshop. For first 7 hours, people were talking about what experience are we delivering, why are we delivering it, what ROI. I think those are the answers we need to find first as BA community to be able to. There was another question on service, product versus service, and services have a problem. We do it in silos. I think, and I agree to that. I've been part of the large services organization in my past life. There are challenges. There are challenges within services organization. There are challenges when we go to customer and work with them. I think that's where we are looking at heroes of BA community to step up the bar. Somebody who stays in that space and remains siloed will remain siloed. But that's where we are, Ashutosh spoke about collaboration. We spoke about collaboration. It's a co-development, right? And BAs have to change their behavior to be able to drive that co-development. That means a lot of capabilities of social engagement with customer, a lot of competencies, soft skills that are required for you to be able to deliver that value.
The other thing was about that trough of disillusionment and plateau of realistic.
So right, so your last question was, where do we place these technologies on that curve that...
Everybody.
So it varies, right? Almost every technology goes through that cycle in your own words, right? So it's not that I can't say that all of them are here right now. So if you look at blockchain, that might be just at the peak of inflated expectations or whatever they call it, but they're pretty much at the top there. And hopefully, once people realize that it cannot solve world hunger just yet, they're going to start using it for something more meaningful and direct. So likewise, every technology is at different levels, so you cannot. So there are charts, so even, so you basically have to plot those on the chart and figure out what exactly you want, where they stand.
That way the BA will be in a position to help if he understands the customer so that they will prevent that to that inflated expectations. They will be realistic to understand, okay, this technology will be can be used in such a situation, and this is going to be the cost, this is going to be the opportunity cost, and this is going to be the benefit.
So, thank you.
So I think...
Last question, please. Last question.
Yeah, I'll try to attempt this here. Here, in front. Yeah, so I'll try to answer his question based on the example shown. If you look at it, there is a car which is owned by a company. Probably the person who is driving it, he may not go to get his car serviced by that company. He might have engaged in a different service provider who might be the most cost effective. The drone service which took a place may not be from the company itself. The insurance company may not be. So who will own this model? Probably a person who owns the platform is the person who is owning it. But do we have examples like this? Bank today at the beginning of the conference, somebody from Capgemini, he gave an example where they're saying that the truck fleet company is now having this model wherein a service repair guy and a component guy are engaging on a platform to deliver the value. So in terms of knowing whether it is implementable possible, yes, we have an example already today in the morning. But who will own it? The car company may not own it because the variability of different businesses is too high for them to focus on. It is not their core business area to look at insurance, service, tow truck, have a drone and do it across.
So I would, sorry to interrupt you, I would agree with you to the extent that there has to be a platform and someone has to own, but I wouldn't say that the car company won't own it. For all you know, some car company might own it, and because they are already working in those directions to kind of bring some of these adjacent or even not so adjacent but completely unique providers onto that platform to solve the problem of the customer which is using their product, right? So it's in that, so if you kind of go back to everything we just talked about, everything is starting with that customer facing that problem, and what else you need to do to make that problem as easy to solve as possible. They kind of brought everything together. So it could be very well be a car company.
And the BA will probably not be from the car company he will be from the platforms company.
All right, for the paucity of time, I think we'll close the Q&A here, but we are here. Please catch up, Ashutosh or me, if you need more questions to be answered.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for showing all the engagement. Very nice.
Thanks, Ashutosh. Thanks, Ashish.